All right, ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you live to episode number 41 right here on Nation Observer. Oh boy, that was a little off there. We'll try that again. We welcome you live to episode number 41 of the Primetime Rundown right here on the Eastern Observer and I-95 Sports Network, Zingo Channel 198. I'm Joey Jarzynka. We cannot thank you enough for joining us here alongside my guys Ian Schraier, Rob DeLuca, and we are joined by Danbury Hattrick's Director of Communication. And for those that do not know where Danbury, Connecticut is, it's just a few miles north of us in the Federal Prospects Hockey League, the FPHL. Ladies and gentlemen, Casey Bryant. Casey, it's been a long time since you and I have seen each other. How are you?
It's been several years, Joey. I bumped into you back when we were working a Marist college hockey game together back in the day. But I've been doing good. Thanks so much for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it.
There's no doubt about it. Ian Schraier, your day has been, let's call it hell. How are you? And thank you so much for making it.
To the viewers out there, I wasn't so sure if I was going to make it tonight. I mean, I think after the show tonight, I might end up crashing on my couch. But listen, I hate missing these shows. I haven't missed one yet. I don't plan to miss one anytime soon. But I got to ask Casey, what Ranger is that over your left shoulder? I can't really tell from this angle.
This is Ryan McDonough, recent Stanley Cup champion. One of many artifacts of Ranger fanhood around my room. I don't know why I have it, but I have a 2005 Rangers media guide sitting over there in my eye line with like the hot prospects of Mark Stahl and this Brandon Dubinsky kid might be something.
I was going to say Yager was still on that team, wasn't he?
Yes, that was one of the Yager era. That was the first year that Lundqvist came over. So this was right as the Rangers were entering relevancy around that point, where like Pat Rissmiller is like one of our top You better look out for that Blair Betts kid.
Rob DeLuca, how have you been?
Hanging in there day by day. A lot of work from home. Stayed home again today, but game day tomorrow. College football doesn't rest even in these times. Even though like 10 games got canceled this weekend, but ours on ABC. Never go anywhere.
Yeah, that's really, really crazy stuff. But for those that are just joining us, we cannot thank you enough for tuning in to the Primetime Rundown. This show is presented to you by Black Cats NYC. In the beginning, if you've been on for the last 3 minutes, 35 seconds, you heard the hit new single from Black Cats NYC, Dirty Little Hipster. It is available on Apple Music, Deezer, YouTube, SoundCloud, Amazon Music, Google Play, Pandora, and Spotify. And we have to thank Andrew Giordano for that song for us, because that is Tyler Adele's uncle. So we really appreciate him giving us that song to use as our introduction song. So pretty cool stuff. So fellas, let's get to it here. And Casey, now you're a part of this little rotational fourth host thing. So we're really grateful that you're on board here. And there's so much to talk about here, where history has been made in Major League Baseball, where first off, a female is the first general manager, Kim Ng, a former assistant for Brian Cashman for the New York Yankees, has been named general manager for the Miami Marlins. And she is the first general manager in all 4 professional sports here in this country. And she's also the first Asian American as well to hold that title and also to be that high up in the rankings of a professional sports franchise in this country. Really good stuff. And not only really good stuff, but it just shows how times are changing, Ian Schraier.
Well, I think in regards to how we see the world today is right now it's all about making sure that we are a country built on diversity and inclusion. And not only is she now the first Asian American to be named a general manager in the major leagues, she's also the first female general manager of any sports league in North America. Think about how long it took for that to happen. And Kim Ng's name had been even rumored about maybe even being the Mets general manager when they hired Brodie Van Wagenen. So her name has been in the loop for a while. A very successful GM. Has a couple of World Series rings too in her times with the Yankees and the Dodgers. She spent the last 9 years serving in quite a role as MLB's senior vice president of baseball operations. they didn't look. Credit to Derek Jeter and company. Okay, they broke that barrier. They finally, they went outside a female general manager. This is just great for baseball.
It's not only is it great for baseball too, but this is also a professional franchise also that also hired their first Black CEO.
Yeah.
Yes, Derek Jeter, ladies and gentlemen, is biracial. He obviously shows a lot more white colored skin, but his father is Black. Rob DeLuca, your thoughts?
Yeah, look, this is just a very historic day in the sports world, baseball especially. I think that Kim Ng here is very, very more than qualified to be a general manager in this sport. She's been around professional baseball now for 30 years. She spent the last decade in the MLB offices, and she has World Series rings from her times with the Yankees, as Ian said. Look, this was not a reach pick. This was not just, let's just hire a woman for the sake of hiring women. No, this was barrier breaking, glass ceiling breaking on a very qualified woman who probably should have had a GM job at least 10 years ago.
Casey Bryant, your thoughts on a historical day in the world of baseball?
I think Rob hit the nail on the head when he said that this wasn't just another diversity hire. This is someone who's been around the baseball landscape for decades now. Let's start with she started off as an intern and rose up through the ranks to be a general manager now. Should give hope to anyone working and getting coffee for their bosses and stacking reams of paper in the back annals of your office. If you're an intern at a sports franchise, that if you apply yourself, you'll be able to rise through the ranks and eventually become a professional. So by that logic, I'll be entitled to own the Knicks in a couple of years, obviously. But it's obviously a tremendous accomplishment for Kim Ng and for the sports world. And she's been highly sought after for some time, and the Marlins have been a laughingstock for many years. It's always been the butt of the joke that they win and blow everything up, and they sell off everyone. They traded away Ozuna, Yelich, and Stanton all in rapid succession, but they did sneak into that expanded playoff picture this year. People sleep on that, so they are building something, and she'll be a part of that.
And to add to Casey's point, the Miami Marlins, Florida Marlins, whatever you want to call them, have never, because of the two fire sales. So Casey's talking about the most recent fire sale, the one that included Ozuna, Realmuto, Yelich, Stanton. Growing up and watching, the Marlins win the World Series in '97 and then beating the Yankees in '03, they sold the team off after both those seasons. Ownership did. It was all part of a liquidity sale. So they sold off their best prospects and their best players because they physically just could not afford them. So I think the right person is at the head of this ship going forward, especially if this expanded postseason stays, which I think it's going to. If this designated hitter rule stays, which I think it's going to, please get rid of this extra inning runner on second base rule. I can't stomach it. But look, it's the right person at the wheel. She's got the experience. She checks all the boxes. And I think clearly the Marlins are an up-and-coming team. And I think, like I said, they've got the right person at the ship.
We're starting to see
the right person at the head of the ship is what I was saying, Joey.
Yeah. We've started to see women break into the field, obviously, and not even only into the field, but also into the ownership position as well. Jeannie Buss, just about a month and a half ago, when the Los Angeles Lakers won their 17th title, she is the first female owner to ever win a title. So that is really something magnificent as well. A little bit more with Kim Ng. She worked under Brian Cashman for the New York Yankees as an assistant. She worked as the LA Dodgers assistant general manager and vice president. And then in 2011, she actually left the Dodgers and came to the East Coast out here in Manhattan. And she became the senior vice president of baseball operations and reported to someone that we all know, Joe Torre. And on top of it, too, she also has a nice wallet size as well. Number 13 on Forbes' list of most influential minorities in sports. But also, she's also the number 5 most powerful woman in sports as well. So she's got some names there, and also she's married into a wine company as well, where her husband is the CEO of a wine company based in Oregon as well. Pretty cool stuff there. So we'll keep seeing the barriers continue to be broken. Let's keep on moving here, fellas, in the world of baseball. Last night, we obviously had Ben Wagner on from the Toronto Blue Jays, and that was our mantra, was if you need baseball back in your life, tune in. So if you're here with us listening about baseball, well, we've got more for you. Tony La Russa, ladies and gentlemen, this is a big topic here because Tony La Russa, just the day before he was hired by the Chicago White Sox, he was pulled over due to a blown out tire on an Arizona highway, and he was charged with DUI. Why? Because he blew a .09 into his breathalyzer exam when the legal limit in this country is .08. So this is not his first offense either. This is his second. This happened also in 2007 when he was with the St. Louis Cardinals at spring training. And coincidentally, that's also in Arizona as well. So I don't know what it is about Arizona and Tony La Russa and, having some alcohol, but I want to start off with Casey Bryant here because, just because I feel, just because we feel like getting started with Casey, we'll go backwards here. Your thoughts on Tony La Russa, and could we see a Wally Bachman 2.0 problem? Just like if we all remember here, 2004, when he was hired in Arizona, ironically enough, he was let go. He was let go because of a drug issue.
Maybe it's the arid Arizona air that gets to people, and so their inebriation is quickened. I don't know what the proper rationale would be. There was concern, I'm sure, that Tony La Russa may have, stepped on a Lego, and now his managerial tenure is over before it begins in Chicago. That's not going to be the case, because it became apparent that Chicago knew about this DUI before he was hired, and they still willingly went along with it. And that's not even the biggest red flag with Tony La Russa. What people are using it now as an excuse of like, see, we told you this was a terrible idea, which it is, don't get me wrong. But like, Tony La Russa is what, 76 years old? Mm-hmm. He's been out of managing for almost a decade. And now we want to plug him into one of the youngest, most exciting, and most entertainingly prolific teams in the MLB as well, because you have all these colorful personalities that are on the field as well, with Tim Anderson, with Jose Abreu, all of these young players that are going to grab the spotlight and like showing themselves off. And now we're handing the reins over to, your grandpa, who is, should be entering Shady Shoals retirement home. So just let him nurse his Miller Lights at home on his front porch, talk about the good old days of the Bash Brothers, and leave it be.
Rob DeLuca.
Yeah, I mean, look, Tony La Russa has not been a manager for almost a decade, as Casey said. I mean, I think I get it on why they did it, because look, they see themselves as a team that can do great things immediately, and they wanted a manager that knew how to win. And obviously, Tony La Russa knows almost nothing besides winning.
He is a Hall of Fame baseball person.
True. But I think that's the only logic I could arrive at here, to why they would go for someone who is literally 2 years younger than our president-elect. And I just don't see what hiring all these old people to do the important jobs like this are going to accomplish. But nonetheless, I think that it's clear Chicago does not care. As they had knowledge, they don't care. They like, you know what? Screw it. We want the World Series title. We think Tony's the man to bring it. I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's how they feel.
Just before we get to Ian on this is something that was made public numerous times by owner, chairman, CEO Jerry Reinsdorf. He publicly said, quote, he made a mistake ending his first tenure. And we remember that his first tenure was from 1979 to 1986. So will he make that mistake again? It seems likely not, because yesterday in a conference call with ESPN, Jerry Reinsdorf said, quote, they are going to let it play out. Ian Schraier, your thoughts as we continue with Tony La Russa.
Yeah, and on top of that, Joey, the quote that ESPN said that the White Sox said in a statement, "We understand the seriousness of these charges." Okay, you understand the seriousness of a guy who clearly has a substance abuse problem. I understand, and I thought Casey really said it perfectly. I think that he's got a substance abuse issue. He's 10 years out of serving as a manager of a Major League Baseball franchise. I understand in Jerry Reinsdorf's case, you feel bad about what might have happened 30 years ago, almost 40 years ago. Mm-hmm. You had a manager that was already there the last 4 years and was coming up with that franchise in Rick Renteria. So, Casey mentioned players like, Tim Anderson. You also have Yoan Moncada and Eloy Jimenez and obviously Jose Abreu, the AL MVP, if they end up re-signing James McCann. And on top of that, they also signed I'm blanking out on his name from the free agent market that they signed.
Yasmani Grandal last year.
Yeah, Yasmani Grandal. So they have just been I don't understand why you would take a manager out of that spot, a manager who inherited a team and in his first season had 100 or more losses. You turn them in 4 years into a playoff franchise. Why in the world now are you going to just kind of push him to the curb because you feel bad about the way things ended with Tony La Russa? He's 76 years old. You already have a manager there you trust. You have a team there that you built together with Renteria at the helm. Why are you going to change things? It just seems to me now that the White Sox are going backwards. I understand. Like, are you picking championships over responsibility at this point? Because that's the way it feels a little bit.
I think, to add my 2 cents into here, I think regardless of the credentials that Tony La Russa comes with, obviously being a 3-time World Series champion, 1989, 2006, 2011, the latter two with the St. Louis Cardinals. Of course, his number 10 is retired, 4-time manager of the year, 83, 88, 92, 2002, also inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame 2014 in the expansion era committee, where he obviously was 100% voted in. I do believe that that's what it is, and I think that with such a young team, it looks very bad when you bring in someone who, as Ian alluded to, has a substance abuse problem. Is that, well, if he has a problem, well, maybe if I were to do something, or even across all of Major League Baseball, if you have an older manager or someone else that has an issue, well, we can get away with it. Jerry Reinsdorf is allowing it. How do you know that someone else might not allow it? It all depends on who or what the credentials is all about with each respective manager. Let's not forget too, Ian and Casey, your Mets, they were interviewing him last year. That was something else. They interviewed him as well. It didn't look like it went far, and we honestly had no idea about that until I think just a couple of days ago when we saw that. And like I said, it was just one phone call and hang up the phone and done. See you never. So really, really odd stuff with Tony La Russa, and even the direction that Jerry Reinsdorf is going down doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and clearly to my fellow co-hosts on here, it doesn't make a lot of sense to them either. Let's get into the New York Mets now. This is something a little bit up Ian and Casey's alley here. Marcus Stroman, he's got a big mouth on him, but guess what? $18.9 million was the qualifying offer that the New York Mets submitted to him. He eventually signed it following numerous tweets saying he wouldn't pay a dime or ever go, or there wouldn't be enough money in the world. That's what it is. There wouldn't be enough money in the world to go to Chicago, to the White Sox, to the South Side. And pretty cool stuff with the New York Mets. And not only that, but Marcus Stroman, how about the press conference? How about we play a couple of minutes of that for all the Mets fans out there, and especially Ian and Casey, so they get the chills once again.
I went to my first Mets game with my dad at the old Polo Grounds. Years later, my friends and I used to sit in the upper deck at Shea Stadium. That makes today a dream come true, not just for me, but for my wife, Alex, and my whole family. Alex's dad, Ralph, makes it to just about every home game. They're all rabid Mets fans, New York fans have high expectations, and I want to exceed them. I want an exceptional team. I want a team that's built to be great every year. I don't just want to get into the playoffs. I want to win a championship. Now, owning a team is a civic responsibility. You hold the team in trust for the community and for the fans. That's how I see my role as the owner of the Mets. And that's why Alex and I plan to invest in communities around Citi Field. Alex is going to lead the Mets Foundation. She's done a great job leading.
All right, so we got the gist of that. In other words, and we know that area around Citi Field needs a lot of investing. But again, in all joking aside, though, to hear that, and then also with Marcus Stroman as well, 18.4 or 5 or between 4 and 9 million. Good stuff for Stroman, Long Island boy. But I want to bring this up too, fellas. You hear that, you hear Steve Cohen, and you hear the trust that he's already spewing out to the public, and it sounds so good. Casey Bryant, this is something that you and Ian have had to go through for most of your life. The mediocrity. I know all of Casey's life. Ian, you got to see. Well, you were 2 or 3 years old when they won in '86. But
I don't remember it. So
exactly.
I might have been on this earth, but I don't remember it.
So mediocrity for the both of you. When you see something like that, Casey, to start with you, how good does that feel? And then also already Marcus Stroman is back in the fold.
Well, there's a lot of things to dive into when it comes to Steve Cohen. First of all, the fact that he is speaking to Mets fans so frankly and so passionately is already a complete 180 from what we had gotten in the past. The Wilpons were essentially in the witness protection program. You never saw them. You never heard from them. They were the Wizard of Oz, just pulling the strings and hiding in the back. Please don't pull back the curtain. Please don't ever talk to us. And the few times you did get the curtain pulled back on them, it was them ripping on their fans, ripping on their players. Lest we forget them making fun of David Wright when he was on the team. They made fun of Jose Reyes when he was on the team. They made fun of Beltran. They were so clueless and so removed from reality that if you read between the lines, there are a couple of moments in Cohen's press conference where you could tell he was twisting the knife a little bit in the Wilpons without saying it explicitly. It was very crafty. When he's thanking previous ownership, thanks Fred, did not thank Jeff Wilpon. When he says, I want to be good every year, and he specifically said later, I don't want to be good 1 year and bad 3 years. That has been the entire Mets' existence because they have made the playoffs in consecutive years, I believe twice, 99 and 2000 and 2015 and 2016. That's it. The 86 team missed the playoffs in 87. In 2000, after we made the World Series, never heard from again until 2006. Awful. They could not surround Mike Piazza with talent. They refused to surround David Wright with talent. And now you have this owner who not only has more money than God to throw around, and he will throw it around. You have someone who actually cares about the fans, someone who we wouldn't have to wait for a Seaver statue. We won't have to wait another 30 years for us to retire another number of a player. This is someone who gets it. So immediately making an impact on the players like that and having ownership you can trust. Syndergaard has said he's on board. He posted gifs of him running through a wall. Stroman has signed on. He's on board. All of a sudden you have this culture shift, which is something that was so needed.
Ian Schraier, you as a Mets fan, because just by watching, and obviously the press conference was a lot longer than just 2 minutes, but this was just the summarized version, if you will. I don't know. That kind of gives me the chills, and I'm not a Mets fan at all. And I'm looking at this saying, okay, now this could be a problem during hot stove season, and that's right now. Ian Schraier, does that press conference Does that make you feel like, okay, we are in the hunt for these big names for the first time? Oh, I'll use Casey's word, in existence.
It certainly feels that way. Look, Bernie Madoff happened, I think, what was it, 2010, somewhere in that realm, 2009. And then after that, you never saw the Mets really go after another big free agent. They weren't afraid to spend on a guy like Carlos Beltran back in 2005. You know, he had the big postseason in 2004 with the Astros, and the Mets signed him, to a 7-year, $91 million deal. How weird is it, or how different, I should say, is it, the fact that Stroman tweets that he's returning to the Mets, and let's call it what it is. The press conference is the reason that Stroman took that qualifying offer. What must be going through a player's mind, or even like an agent like Scott Boras, who would always say, we're going to go shopping at Fred's, we're going to go shopping on the discount racks, to hear an owner say, we're going to be great, to hear Mike Francesa, of all people, tweet out and say something, and now we know how wrong he is all the time, but to say, this man is going to make the Mets perennial powerhouses. Anything less than that, and I'd be surprised. This man literally tweeted at Marcus Stroman when Stroman said he was coming back, basically said, I am thrilled to write you a check for $18.9 million. Do you know what kind of player the Mets would have had to sign to say, I will give you 1 year at $18.9 million? It's never happened. What makes this ownership so different isn't because the guy is worth $14 billion. Partially it is, but he has said the Mets are not a moneymaker to me. He has his hedge fund. He's like, I'm going to make millions, billions of dollars that way. I'm going to take that money. I'm going to invest it in my favorite team that I had as a child, and it still is my favorite team today. He had a minority stake in the Mets for 8 years?
Yeah.
You have to be getting giddy over it if you're a Mets fan. The fact that ESPN and every Major League Baseball outlet is talking about Bauer to the Mets. Lindor has the best right now in Vegas. Lindor has the best odds of being traded to the Mets. Real Muto to the Mets. George Springer to the Mets. When was the last time we even discussed one of those big market names possibly becoming a Met? This is just very, very exciting times right now. I could even tell you guys, like I had the Mets calling me the other day, ticket rep asking me if I wanted to re-up my plan or have a plan for the first time in a couple of years. And the ticket rep actually sounded confident in what he was telling me because he knew what ownership planned to do. You know, he was telling me, he's like, Ian, do you know what I had to do the last 2 years? I had to try to sell Wilson Ramos. Those are his words, not mine. So imagine what it was like with the Wilpons for 20 years and what it is now.
Well, if I could build off that also, too, because you touched on the Beltran contract for $91 million. In the grand scheme of things, $91 million is not that expensive.
No, I think at that point it was still a pretty big deal.
In I think the most expensive contract, other than DeGrom and Johan Santana, got the most expensive contracts in our history, I believe, at about $150 million, which, again, is a lot of money, but also not a lot of money. Think about how many players we've had to let go because we just didn't want to pay them. We didn't want to pay Daniel Murphy, so we lost him and he became a .350 hitter in Washington. We didn't want to pay Zach Wheeler. If Zach Wheeler was on the Mets last year, the Mets make the playoffs. That's just the bottom line.
I'm sorry, I still can't vouch for him.
I said, look, I'm not saying he's great. I'm not saying he's great, but if we had Steve Cohen FU money,
yep,
he could be a 3-4 starter, no problem.
Right.
There's so many players. And Paul LaDuca was on WFAN for Joe Beningo's retirement show a week ago. And he was talking about the difference between Cohen and Wilpon. And he goes, man, if we had an owner who was willing to buy a reliever or two when Billy Wagner got hurt in 2007, we'd make the playoffs. Because instead, we claimed Luis Ayala off waivers to be our closer. And you're relying on Scott Schoenweiss. And you're relying on Jorge Julio. And you're relying on this just never-ending parade of clowns coming through the bullpen. Aaron Heilman, Jorge Sosa, Nelson Figueroa. You're just throwing at Pat Mish. It's just
Joey, I think he's
wow. Listen to the names Casey's throwing out right now. I'm really impressed.
I think he's making some of these up.
No, he's really not. That's
Tommy Malone was our lefty starter not a couple of years ago. And he was the opening day starter for the Orioles this year, which, by the way, is hilarious. But, like,
Remember John Lennon?
Oh yeah, John Lennon. Are you kidding me? When our starting rotation after Santana included Tim Redding and Chris Capuano. Are you kidding me?
Joey, I think the Wilpons really grinds these two's gears.
I mean, you know what? And it's very funny because now that Casey Bryan is here, we can now introduce him to our normal segment, which is what really grinds our gears. And clearly we know what grinds Casey's gears because that was a spiel right there.
And I know we haven't gotten to DeLuca yet, so I can't wait to hear what DeLuca has to say. But let me ask you this. When Cohen had his press conference and said, I am in this to have fun, and I am going to let the baseball guys direct the way baseball is going to go, did it not, and granted, we all weren't alive when he took over, but doesn't it have, in some slight way, because of the money and the way he wants this team to be run, doesn't it have a little bit of a Steinbrenner feel? Like when George Steinbrenner bought the Yankees, he says, I'm not going to be involved. I'm going to let the front office handle their business. I'm going to make money on my oil business, and I don't need to worry. I'm just going to invest my money. I'm going to make the Yankees great. And then what happened? George Steinbrenner was involved in every decision day to day that was involved with the Yankees. Do I think Steve Cohen's going to become the same type of owner? I don't know. I think he says I'm in this to have fun, but just like any other investor, he wants to make sure there's a dividend on that investment.
There's probably some semblance of ego in there too.
Yeah,
I'm sure that you don't make $12 billion in your life and not have an ego. So he probably does want to be included a little bit. But it is nice to hear in a city that did have to deal with Jeff Wilpon and currently deals with Jim Dolan constantly inserting themselves into this scenario. It is nice to hear him say it. At least.
Yeah, absolutely.
And on top of it too, fellas, I'm sure Dallas Cowboys fans are thinking the same exact thing when they're saying, for the love of God, can Jerry Jones not have anything to do with any football operations, etc.? Rob
Joey, he has his own radio show in Dallas. His own radio show.
He owns tons of oil. He owns insane amounts of oil. He has a radio show. And he also does day-to-day operations. But listen, when you're the one signing checks, sometimes I understand. I mean, you want to make sure that, as both you and Casey said, that your investments do pay off. Rob DeLuca, the New York Mets kind of scare me as a Yankees fan. Again, this is a perfect segue we'll get to in a second. But, you look at the free agent class, and as Ian said earlier, these big free agent names, not the biggest one on the market because they're actually someone in the AL East. We'll get to that in a moment. But free agents 2, 3, and 4 in terms of the hot stove are all linked to the Mets. How scared are you as a Yankees fan?
Terrified. I mean, look, I welcomed the Mets, the competition that the Mets are finally going to bring to the Yankees after all these years. Kind of wishing I didn't say that now. Because now I realize how serious Cohen is about this and how he really is going to probably make the Mets great again. There's not even a question about that. And he's going to –
What is again? What is again?
When
were we ever great? We had isolated 1-year periods. We're never great. What is again?
1986.
Doesn't that count? Does that count?
I do want to jump back to Casey's point real quick, though, about how he said in 2001 how the Mets just became non-existent. A big reason why in 2000 the Mets were in the playoff picture after 9/11. Like everybody remembers the home run he hits, and Andrew Jones going back, it's gone, and Howie Rose's infamous call. This one has a chance. The Mets were in the playoff picture with 3 weeks to go. What they really missed that season was Mike Hampton. People like don't underestimate how big of a factor Mike Hampton was that season. The only reason he didn't stay in New York and got dealt to Colorado was because he thought the education system in New York was terrible. That's why he left. And they dealt him to Colorado. So the Mets had him for one season, but he gave them the ace that they just desperately needed, and the team just followed behind. The Mets were not, even though they led in every game in the 2000 World Series. A lot of fans forget that. The Mets led in every game in the 2000 World Series against the Yankees. In theory, the Mets could have won the 2000 World Series. Were they the better team? Hell no. Like, the Mets were living off Benny Agbayani and Jay Payton and
legends.
Oh God, and Kurt Abbott and Mike Bordick. Like they were living off Piazza. You know, you were living off Piazza. You were living off Robbie Ventura. You were living off Edgardo Alfonso. That team wasn't all that good, but they had Hampton and Leiter, and that's why they got there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Joey. Yeah, just to keep going, I think the Mets are really going to be a threat way sooner rather than later. Now that they have money that they're willing to spend, they are in the picture on every single top free agent out there in my mind. And yes, I'm gonna do it just because I apparently love making these segues, sometimes by accident, but this one's gonna be on purpose. They are very much in the picture for DJ LeMahieu because DJ LeMahieu wants to be in New York. He said New York. He said the other day, New York he thinks it's a perfect fit for him. He did not specify necessarily the Yankees. He just said New York. You assume that means the Yankees. For someone like me, I pray that means the Yankees because the bottom line is the Yankees need to pay this man. But the problem is they now have some serious competition to be outbid. They really have this issue of not getting these prize free agents because the Mets now have essentially the richest man sports has ever seen.
And it's a perfect segue because DJ LeMahieu has been linked to the Toronto Blue Jays, a franchise that is known for not spending their money. And it's very funny because I have family that not only lives in the Toronto area, suburban Toronto area, but they're diehard Jays fans. And this is something that I've always been told for a majority of my life. And that is that the Rogers Communication, which is who owns the Jays, they are the American League Wilpons, where they have so much money, but they do not spend it. And they trade for guys, they drain their farm system, and they never want to give out these big free agent contracts. Well, I don't know what's gone on. Maybe they don't want to hear that term anymore, but we've heard that not only from my family, but also throughout Toronto too. I've heard that on talk radio while I've been up there. And, DJ LeMahieu could potentially fill in a hole at third base or possibly first base. Who knows? There's a lot of talk that there's could be a 4-year deal in place or rumored to be put in place by the Jays. Guys, I want to start with Rob DeLuca here again because you talk about the competition here in New York, but guess what? Not only the competition in New York, but clearly north of the border, there's some talk with LeMahieu going there to play third base. Vlad Guerrero is good to go at first base or even designated hitter. And there's also talk where Vlad may want to go back to third base. So is there really a fit there? And is Toronto a good landing spot for DJ?
A good landing spot for DJ, I don't know about that because I think DJ LeMahieu deserves to be on a team that's an immediate contender because just with how hard he works, his work ethic is there 150% every single day. He has a 345 average since becoming a New York Yankee, which is unheard of. The fact that he was only received one first place vote for MVP kind of baffled me, but nonetheless, I digress from that. Jose Abreu definitely deserved it. But I really just need to say this, and that is directly to Brian Cashman, who I am sure is listening to this. Shut up and hand the man a check and let him put whatever number he wants on there and give it to him. This is not the time to start penny pinching when you have a team that is supposedly right there, inches away from glory. You can't start getting nitpicky with your money. You better pay your best player by a country mile the money he deserves to continue being your second baseman. Because this team's performance, not only on offense, but even in the field, it's going to go down significantly without someone like LeMahieu. So, look, anyone that's willing to pay LeMahieu is an automatic threat because it seems right now that the Yankees are not exactly close to getting him back right now. So I am very terrified. If the Blue Jays actually do pony up the dough, why wouldn't he go there? He gets whatever he will deserve, whatever amount of money he is given, and there is no question about that.
Let's not forget also, Rogers Communications is worth $4 billion Canadian, which is roughly about 2.5 billion in American dollars. So, they've got the money to pony up. Ian first, and then Casey Bryant. Ian, I want to start with you here because I want to, again, throw in my 2 cents before you guys take it over. If LeMahieu were to go someplace, what does this mean for the Yankees? Well, guess what? I wouldn't be surprised if there is a reunion with a Didi Gregorius. Why not? Why would you trade for Francisco Lindor and have to give up the farm when not only what you just said, where the odds in Vegas have Lindor going to the Mets, but right now, we don't know what the culture is like in the Bronx, where right now, again, everything is unknown in Queens also. What are your thoughts on the possibilities of replacing LeMahieu either second base, maybe at shortstop? What happens? Is there a juggle in the infield?
I just don't know if they want to bring Didi Gregorius back. Look, he's only a year removed from being a Yankee, and obviously he had a solid year in Philadelphia. The names that are being linked to the Yankees right now in regards to maybe acquiring an infielder, Lindor is one of them. The other is Andrelton Simmons from the Angels, have been the two names that I've heard the most frequently in regards to, if the Yankees tried to go out and trade for somebody. I think what they're trying to do, at least the Yankees, is they're trying to make up for Gleyber Torres's bad defense is what they're trying to do. And I think if they can do that and acquire a Simmons or a Lindor, you can shift Torres to second base, a shorter distance to throw, not as much ground to cover. And then you could put a player like a Lindor, who's obviously a fantastic shortstop as well as a great bat in a much smaller stadium, for him to succeed. So that would work out great for them. So I think that's why maybe you're not hearing, I don't want to say you're not hearing DJ LeMahieu's name. We really haven't heard anything. I know MLB Trade Rumors reported a possible 4 years, $68 million deal if he did sign with Toronto. But what makes DJ, and this is alluding to Rob's point, what makes DJ so invaluable to the Yankees is that he is the only contact hitter on that team. The only contact hitter. You go up and down that lineup. That lineup is full of swing or miss hitters. I mean, Stanton, Judge. I'm only naming two, but you go right down the list. That Gary Sanchez, whose name is now being rumored in trade. But these are all guys that don't hit for contact. They hit for power. What made DJ so good is that he hits for contact. Yeah, he can drive the ball in Yankee Stadium where you're going to play 81 games a year. It doesn't take a lot to drive the ball out in the Bronx. The guy is 10th in Major League Baseball since becoming a Yankee in OPS. He's 12th in WAR. So, yeah, in that respect, he's invaluable. The problem I see with Cashman is the fact that he is 32 years old and does not want to throw an enormous contract at DJ LeMahieu in the same way that they didn't throw an insane amount of money at Robbie Cano, and look how that worked out.
That is a pretty good comparison. DJ LeMahieu, one of 3 finalists for the AL MVP this year, and he also won the batting title. 361 was his average. Casey Bryant.
I tell you, if I was DJ LeMahieu, I would not want to go anywhere else other than the Bronx, if only just because, and I mean no disrespect when I say this to DJ LeMahieu or about DJ LeMahieu, is that he has picked the 2 perfect spots to build his career. He started off in Colorado, and in Colorado, it's well documented at this point, you hit better at home. Charlie Blackmon has made an entire career. He's made a lot of money out of it. Dante Bichette, Vinny Castilla, whoever you want to pick. Todd Helton was a great Hall of Fame hitter in Colorado and a good hitter away from Colorado. And that was DJ LeMahieu's defining characteristic until he got to the Bronx. And in the Bronx, he's become a great hitter away from home as well. But when he hits at Yankee Stadium, especially, I'll refer to 2019 specifically because in a shortened season, it's really hard to tell. Shortened season in 2020, he hit over 400 at Yankee Stadium, which is just ludicrous, and he hit 300 everywhere else. When he's home or away last year, it was 340 at home and 320 on the road. which is the difference is that he was still able to hit on the road. But he's hitting 340 at Yankee Stadium. I wouldn't want to go anywhere else. I wouldn't want to go to Citi Field. I wouldn't want to go to the Rogers Center. I would want to stay in the hitter's ballpark, because he is a contact hitter, but he's able to get more doubles. He's able to get more home runs when he's at a hitter's park. I wouldn't want to go anywhere else other than Yankee Stadium, especially considering it's the Yankees. You're going to compete every year. You're going to be hailed as a god by the bleacher creatures. I don't see why I would want to go anywhere else if I was DJ LeMahieu.
Great point. Yankees Twitter widely already considers him as probably the greatest hitter to ever live in the history of baseball.
Is he Ty Cobb? Yes, he's better than Ty Cobb.
That's right. Is he Pete Rose? No, he's far above.
He's even better.
And to Rob's point, I don't see, even though this conversation has been so one-sided in regards to the fact that Steve Cohen is going to spend all this money and acquire every free agent on the market. DJ LeMahieu is probably the one name right now I don't see the Mets going after, simply because somebody in some way has to get moved around. Right now, the second baseman, even though he doesn't play second base, is Jeff McNeil. Unless McNeil or they find a way to dump Cano's contract, I just don't see where they're going to move DJ LeMahieu around. Or are they going to bring in another first baseman? DJ LeMahieu is going to become a platoon for Alonso. They have Dom Smith. And secondly, DJ LeMahieu is an everyday player. So right now, based on how things are turning out, there's just too many other needs elsewhere for the Mets. And on top of that, if they even go trade for Lindor, then if the pieces are getting traded away, then maybe. But I don't see them giving up on McNeil at this point.
Let's keep it moving forward here, because we're going to be talking about Mets baseball anyway with our Mets insider, Michael Barron, joining us at 8 p.m. anyway. Former SNY.TV and MLB.com contributor will be joining us here from 8 o'clock to 8:30. So please stick around for that. It's going to be tons of fun while we continue our guest series. It's going to be tons of fun to have on a baseball writer. And again, as we kept saying, and this is the same mantra, keep baseball in your life while it's the winter and it's getting cold. The World Series, it feels like it just ended a couple of days ago, but really we're two and a half weeks out. Really, really crazy stuff. So let's now move to the gridiron and football. Last night, fellas, the Colts and the Titans. Listen, something that Rob DeLuca had said is that the Titans are fake news. The Titans should be sold. The Titans are just not good. So I want to start off with DeLuca here. I don't know. What do you think about the Titans?
Well, I mean, look, this is back to back now. This is back to back losses against games they probably should have won, and they did not. You can't lose. First of all, losing to the Bengals is an embarrassment enough, but you're only 6-2 at that point. But now you're starting to slip. Now you're losing 2 in a row. Schedule doesn't get any easier. You gotta try to figure out a way to get back to where you were just 2 weeks ago at 6-1, and it seemed like you were going to be an unstoppable force through the playoffs here. But it seems to me like Ryan Tannehill is being exposed for what he's supposed to do, but can't do, and that's be a quarterback that can throw the ball. He did not have a great game last night. They figured out the Colts defense figured out Derrick Henry early, which left a big problem for the Titan offense, because when you stop Derrick Henry, you force Tannehill to work, and it just didn't pan out last night. And the Colts and Phillip Rivers, granted it's two separate sides of the ball, but Phillip Rivers took advantage of that and made himself the better quarterback last night and put the Colts back into playoff picture.
Ryan Tannehill, 15 for 27, 147 yards in the air, 1 touchdown, and an 83.4 passer rating, compared to Phillip Rivers, 29 for 39, 308 passing yards, a touchdown, and a 105.5 passer rating. Ian Schraier, your thoughts. But first, we have a little comment here about Ian Schraier.
Oh,
all right.
Thank you, Danny.
He says, Ian, good stuff there.
Thank you.
Ian, so now your thoughts on the Titans. Are they an absolute abomination?
No, not yet. I think the stats are very misleading from last night when you were talking about Tannehill and Phillip Rivers' numbers. Number one, the first drive of the game, Tennessee drove down the field because of Ryan Tannehill and went up 7-0 early. They were up 7-3 on their second drive. This didn't change the game, but this could have really played a huge factor going forward. He drops a perfect ball to A.J. Brown that he flat out drops. It is 6 if he catches the ball. I mean, he's well covered. I mean, Ryan Tannehill puts that ball in the perfect place where the cornerback can't get there, and A.J. Brown flat out drops it. There is no one in front of him if he makes that catch. It's 14-3, not 10-3. I thought at certain points last night that the Titans were ready to surge again. They defensively, it seems like they are finally starting to put the pieces of the puzzle back together. They had 3 huge red zone stops, twice on 4th and 1. One of them was 4th and 1 from the 1. I should say 4th and goal from the 1. What changed the outset of that? What changed the result of that game was the god-awful special teams of the Tennessee Titans. They ran out a rookie punter. He shanked a 17-yard punt. The Colts come down, score a touchdown. Next drive for Tennessee. The punt is blocked and picked up in the end zone for a touchdown. Colts go ahead. They couldn't survive after that. The special team, Rob's boy, Steven Gostkowski, misses a 44-yard field goal to the right. What happens? The Colts turn it into 6. As a result, the Colts scored 21 unanswered points. I am not high on the Colts still. I don't care what anybody tells me. The Titans are definitely starting to turn the page, but the special teams is what let them down last night. It wasn't Ryan Tannehill. It wasn't Derrick Henry. It was the special teams because the defense was doing their job. But what can you expect if you have a punt that travels 17 yards from your own 10 or a punt that gets blocked and gets recovered in the end zone for a touchdown? Nothing you can do about it.
It's 34-17 was the final score last night. Casey Bryant, would you like to contribute to this topic here?
Well, firstly, I'm forgiving towards Ryan Tannehill, if only just because he is the quarterback for Saquon Solo, my fantasy team. He is going to lead us to glory. I'm more forgiving towards Ryan Tannehill's struggles because in the past, Tannehill efficiency has been the name of the game for Ryan Tannehill. You know, last year he leads the NFL in yards gained per pass attempt, and this is once upon a time a 4,000 passing yard quarterback. Even this year, when his numbers haven't been fantastic, blowing you away, he still is one of the leaders in the NFL in fourth quarter comebacks, in game-winning drives. You know, he's still a quarterback that you can rely on because he makes the most of the passing attempts that he does make. He doesn't throw in volume so much as he does just trying to complete the smarter passes, which is why when you see a passing line where it only has him at 150, 140 passing yards, as he's been limited to a couple of times this season, you start to scratch your head and you're like, what is happening here? So part of it is the protection and part of it is why you lose doubling up your score when your quarterback really shouldn't. He didn't have a great game, but he still is fine. Special teams is what killed them. Ian is absolutely right in that particular regard. So I'm not necessarily hitting the panic button on the Tennessee Titans yet. However, they do need to turn the page and fix things defensively and on the special teams end of things because their points allowed per game this year, it isn't up to snuff.
You brought up, Ian, just a few moments ago, Steven Gostkowski. His missed field goal in the fourth quarter, here's a little bit of insight here, was his 8th in 9 games this season. 9 missed field goals in previous 3 seasons combined.
And isn't it incredible how he has single-handedly, in a lot of ways, been responsible for their hot start? So the fact that he's missed as many field goals as he has, but still somehow when you need him in the fourth quarter with under 2 minutes to go, the guy could probably drill it from 60. Just the way it works. It's like Adam Vinatieri. Somehow his leg still works.
Really, really crazy stuff. So now let's do a run-through of a buy or sell here, ladies and gentlemen. So while we have Casey Bryant on, let's make it a nice little family buy or sell here. And let's start it off here. So we'll start off with Ian first. The Indianapolis Colts, buy or sell on them? What do we got?
Selling. 100% selling. look, to their credit, they are number 7 out of 32 teams in the NFL in point differential. They have the number 1 defense, at least statistically, in the league. I think we saw a lot of good signs from them again last night, and understandably why they have the number 1 defense in the league. According to their adjusted win expectation, based on their performance on the field, they're supposed to be like a 10.5, 11-win team. As long as Phillip Rivers is the quarterback of a franchise, it doesn't matter what franchise it is. This man cannot win a game when it counts. You give this guy the ball with 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, unless he has LaDainian Tomlinson in his backfield, it does not matter. The guy does not win the big one. And it helps Indianapolis right now that they are playing in the most overrated division in the AFC. I mean, you look at the division. I mean, the Texans are terrible because their defense is just so bad. You feel bad for Deshaun. Jacksonville's Jacksonville. But look at the 2 top teams right now in the AFC South. The Colts are getting by on their defense. The Titans are a sieve of a defense. People were putting even myself was putting the Titans as a Super Bowl contender only 2-3 weeks ago. I'm still not ready to count them possibly out as that. If they can find a way to turn things around defensively, I think they are a solid team. I just think look, the Colts are going to make the playoffs. I don't think there's any doubting that. I just don't think that they're going to be a team that gets out of the wild card round. Right now, they're a 4 seed projected to play the Ravens in the wild card round, who they just lost to 2 weeks ago, 24-10. So I think the Colts get in. They're 6-3. I think they've got a favorable schedule down the stretch, but in the playoffs, I'm not putting any stake in Rivers in that team.
Very similar to Phillip Rivers' most of his tenure in San Diego, when I think the farthest they made it to was the AFC Championship game, and that was it. Casey Bryant, buy or sell on the Indianapolis Colts?
I mean, in the sense of making the playoffs, absolutely I'm buying in, because if only just because the strength of their schedule isn't very difficult, as Ian touched on. You still have 2 games left against the Houston Texans. You still get to play the Jacksonville Jaguars. They still have an opportunity to make some noise. They'll be playing the Tennessee Titans. What is going to come into play for them once you get into the postseason, and even for their next matchup against the Green Bay Packers, is the defense legit? Because right now, in terms of points scored against, they're one of the best teams in the AFC. The question is their defense for real? Because if they go anywhere, it is not going to be because of Phillip Rivers. It is going to be because of their defense. They have very strong Denver Bronco Peyton Manning vibes, where they are trying to just lug this ancient quarterback, drag him through the quicksand, try to get him towards that Super Bowl. Do I believe that they're winning the Super Bowl this year? No. But in terms of the context of the question is, as I interpret it, is will they be making the playoffs? And yeah, I'd put money down on that.
Rob DeLuca, your thoughts, buy or sell?
Yeah, they both kind of touched on my points. Yeah, I think the Colts will make the playoffs, but in terms of how solid they are overall, I'm selling. Phillip Rivers is not a clutch quarterback by any sense of the word. He has more kids than he does playoff wins. I mean, it doesn't say much. So, but no, yeah, Ian pretty much stole my thunder when he went off on Rivers, because that's just it. As long as Phillip Rivers is the quarterback of a franchise, it's not going anywhere in the playoffs. He's a solid regular season quarterback, but that's it. He can't get it done when it counts.
Fellas, real quickly, we have 1 minute to go before we introduce our Mets insider and our next guest, Michael Barron. Buy or sell on the Buffalo Bills, yes or no, or buy or sell? Only answer, guys. Ian, start with you first.
I'll make it quick. I'm an iffy buy. They still have a lot of question marks defensively after the year they had last year. They are bottom half right now in the league in total defense. So they're only going to go as far as Josh Allen takes them, who right now, to his credit, is a top 5 QB in the NFL. I'm an iffy buy, but I'm a buy.
Casey Bryant, buy or sell, Buffalo Bills?
I'm buying. Feed me these 40 to 35 games all year long.
20 seconds to go. Rob DeLuca, buy or sell, Buffalo Bills?
Yeah, I'm gonna buy in. I think the AFC East is too much of a joke, so it's gonna help. It's gonna help them. They're obviously gonna win the division, and it'll propel them to a home game. And when they're at home, when you're in your own home stadium, you have more comfort.
Casey Bryant, ladies and gentlemen. Casey, we all appreciate you coming aboard tonight. And the Director of Communications for the Danbury Hat-Tricks in the Federal Prospects Hockey League, Casey Bryant, ladies and gentlemen. Casey, thank you so much for coming on tonight, buddy.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Take care.
Well, we'll see you soon. And let's welcome in our next guest, Michael Barron. And Michael, thank you very much for coming on here. Joey Jarzynka, Ian Schraier, and hold on, we got a little little backwards there. We're somewhere around here. There we go. Okay. Ian Schraier, Rob DeLuca. I'm Joey Jarzynka. Thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure. I don't know if I could top that Philip Rivers comment.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
My goodness. So, as a good introduction for Michael Barron, ladies and gentlemen, Mets insider, formerly with SNY.TV and MLB.com contributor. So, Michael, again, thank you so much for coming on here. Really appreciate it. We all do. And first off, just to start off with things, I'll start this off here. What has COVID been like for you as a Mets insider? Because there's so much to discuss, not only with the positives of the Mets, but really a little more closer to home and really in our industry, there's a lot of changes that are going on.
No, it's a good question because I know I myself, I would say that sports was, for me anyway, sports was a definite, distant second, in the grand scheme of things, right? I mean, I think for the first time in a long time, there was a lot of perspective brought, for everybody, including the players. I don't think that you could find, too many of those guys out there who, weren't thinking about their own health and, the health of their families and their friends, before baseball. So I would say that it's been educational, to say the least. I mean, forget the rules and forget, the technicalities around COVID. I think, to see the players, and hear the players, take it as seriously as they did this year. I know there were some exceptions to that, of course, but generally speaking, to see how much the players cared about their health but also staying on the field and doing what they could to stay on the field, knowing that they were at risk and they were putting others at risk, and that no matter what they said or no matter what they did, there was always a chance that one day their team could get shut down. And it happened in the Mets, along with the Marlins, and the Yankees and the Cardinals certainly took a huge beating from it. It was fascinating to see. It was a much different season, for a number of reasons. I mean, for me personally, and obviously looking at the team and seeing how they operated, and the league, how they operated, and everything Rob Manfred did to get through the season, which I know he deserves a lot of criticism for some of the decisions that he's made, and there's been a lot of questionable decisions at best, but he got through the season, and that's a testament to Major League Baseball and what the program they put forth, and I think they do deserve a lot of credit for that. So.
Yeah, crawl to the finish line, no doubt about it. Especially we know what happened in Arlington, Texas, with Justin Turner. But a little bit more of a positive note. We're going to send it over now to Ian Schraier, who's a lifelong Mets fan, and I'm sure he's got tons of questions for you, especially now that Steve Cohen is now in the saddle, in the chairman, CEO, and everything seat.
Well, I've certainly been a follower of Michael's on Twitter for a long time, and certainly remember when he was, a writer for Mets Blog, and following everything that would happen on that website as well. And I guess, Michael, let's start, with some happier times. I guess Steve Cohen, the new owner of the Mets, and can you take us through your opinion on the press conference? And did that press conference, was that really the reason for Marcus Stroman signing that QO? Because it certainly seemed like he didn't want to come back.
Well, I mean, look, I think there are certain economic reasons why Marcus made the decision he made. I think it's easy for him to say, well, I just love that press conference, so boom, I'm signed, I'm taking the QO. But, when you look at, what appears to be a severely depressed free agent marketplace for players, the market's about to get even more diluted with the non-tenders, and there are going to be players who are non-tendered who do not deserve to be non-tendered and shouldn't be non-tendered, but because of financial challenges, the league and the 30 clubs have in front of them, especially with the potential of another work stoppage a year from now due to the CBA expiring. There's going to be it's like there are going to be a lot of Brad hands out there, in my opinion. It's not just there aren't going to just be a couple of surprises and a couple of disappointments. So, for Stroman, I think it would be in his best interest. And I'm not the player; it's not my wallet. course, and I'm not the agent, but I think it would be in his best interest to try and work out a deal beyond 2021. Just because there's even more uncertainty ahead. I would say more so for baseball than for other sports. And then you add in the COVID factor, right? So now I don't know what his plans are, what he's thinking. I did get the sense a year ago that there was interest in a longer term deal, but things that was a year ago, and that was a lot's happened in the last 365 days. So we'll see what happens. I don't know that it was anything that Steve Cohen or Sandy Alderson said that may have made the decision easy for him. I couldn't tell you that, but I think he has a lot to be excited about. I mean, he makes the team, and no one's going to debate that he makes the team better just because of what we saw when they didn't have him this year. So, in 2020. So, he's an important piece, and I'm glad personally and professionally that he's back. I think like I said, he makes the team a lot better, and it's about the name on the front of the jersey. And, you're talking about one of the I would say the winningest personalities in baseball, Marcus Stroman. I don't know that he has a lot in his trophy case to show for it just yet, but this is someone who is. We've seen and heard how much he puts the team above anything else, and these are the kinds of guys you want on the team, and you want guys that want to be there too. And it sure sounds like he wants to be there, and money talks, of course, but. If Steve Cohen made the decision easier, that's great. I don't know that it did personally. I think that there's a lot more at stake than what Steve Cohen may or may not say in public. But I'm glad at least he made it sound like that was a factor.
Right now, it seems like Marcus Stroman's, at least at the current time, is going to get supplanted at least until Noah comes back as the number 2 starter in that Mets rotation. But obviously, a lot of rumors circling based on the press conference and based on what Sandy Alderson had to say about Trevor Bauer. I know Charlie Morton's name's been rumored. He wants to stay on the East Coast. What's a realistic look right now, in your opinion, for the Mets rotation in 2021?
You mentioned Trevor Bauer. I think that's realistic. Yes, they have a lot of money to spend, but they have the need, and he makes them instantly better and offers instant credibility to a rotation that's just a god-awful mess right now, even with Stroman. It's just a little bit better than being a mess, So I think Bauer's realistic. They have the payroll space to work with. They have the cash to work with. They're in an advantageous position in the free agent market because Steve Cohen's not coming in suffering from an economic problem in the game, whereas pretty much every other owner is. So that puts him in a position of strength, and he makes the Mets an interesting landing spot if you're a free agent too, because that if you're going to get your money, it might very well be from Steve Cohen. And when on earth have we said that about the Mets, right? When they're the ones in the market looking to spend big bucks, and it's something Sandy Alderson said the other day. I don't know if you heard it, but it's something that's really stuck with me. And he said, it's no longer about the cost of the acquisition. Essentially, I'm paraphrasing. It's no longer about the cost of the acquisition, but it's about the acquisition itself. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
This is what happens when you're in your home at your kitchen table.
It's all good.
Okay.
So I have to ask then, do you, at least at this point, I think we all do as Met fans, but certainly for yourself, do you have a wish list at this point for what you would like to see come out of the free agent market? What is really a sour market at this point because we don't know what the economic issues are for most of these teams. Can they afford these types of free agents? We're hearing names like Lindor get shopped around because the Indians might not be able to hang on to him financially, and the Mets seem very willing to at least listen to it. But do you have a wish list right now in terms of what you would like to see out of this offseason?
And Lindor is one of them. I mean, I think when you can get a premier player at a premium position, I don't care what team it is. Like, I think there are at least 27 teams that can figure out a way to make Lindor fit at shortstop for them, right? And the Mets, certainly being one of them, with Ahmed Rosario, who just, he hasn't lived up to the potential yet. And, Andres Jimenez, who showed promise this past season, albeit in a 60-game sprint. he's just not projected to be what someone like Lindor is. And if you have an opportunity to get a guy like Lindor, and they certainly have the luxuries in trade to get him. I think they would have. I think it would certainly include one of the shortstops, which is fine. I think in a deal like that. I would expect, someone like Brandon Nimmo would be involved in that deal, at least a top prospect as well, and maybe a piece out of the bullpen. But I don't know that that's a big price to pay for him. It may be a little extreme, but I think you know what I'm getting at. Like, I think the Mets are in a position right now where they should do what they have to do to get him. But in addition to that, I think their needs are obvious. They have needs up the middle. They are not strong, generally speaking, up the middle, whether you're talking about the catching position, anywhere in the rotation, anyone in the rotation not named Jacob deGrom at this point. And, I'll throw Marcus Stroman into that mix, although he hasn't pitched in a year. They're weak defensively up the middle with Robinson Cano, and, you could argue that Ahmed Rosario has made improvements, but he's certainly, average at best at, defensively. And certainly, Brandon Nimmo should not be in center field. He was statistically the worst, if not one of the worst defensive center fielders in the game. And he's best suited in a corner. So that means they need a center fielder. So that's, those are the needs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that they can fill all of them, but I certainly expect with the payroll space that they have, the money they have to spend, and all the rhetoric coming from Steve Cohen and Sandy Alderson, which, is a breath of fresh air. It's nice to hear that, they're going to they intend to put a winner on the field next year, and they are going to have a payroll commensurate to a big market. When have you heard this from the Mets before? So, it's not. It's encouraging to hear that, and it gives you confidence that they're going to fill their needs, with players who can start on any team, and that should be the goal of any major league roster, that you have players who can start on any team at all 8 positions. And I think they're going to do that. Are they going to get Real Muto? I don't know, but I do think that someone, such as Trevor Bauer, George Springer, certainly Lindor, these are realistic names all of a sudden, whereas a year ago you couldn't have even thought of one, and maybe now you can think of having all three of those people, with room to spare on the payroll for bullpen, additional rotation help, and so on and so forth, which they still need. But they're the top of their list. Has to be the rotation and strengthening their game up the middle.
Now, I'm sorry, Ian.
Go ahead, Joey.
Two questions that I have for you, Michael. And we spoke earlier about Marcus Stroman, and you had brought up about how he wants to be on a team, and where he did sign the qualifying offer. But here, as a Yankees fan, I look at what we've heard in the Toronto media after there was some tweets that was said directly from Marcus Stroman, where he wouldn't go to Chicago, to the White Sox, for all the money in the world, he wouldn't do it. So after that, we heard where he might have been a cancer in Toronto, or he might be a cancer even in Queens. Now, when we see stuff, like that on Twitter and it publicly out there, and then we see Steve Cohen go out on Twitter and say, "I'm going to call you in a few hours," which has to be the coolest thing, because after all these guys are human. But because Steve Cohen has made a sweeping culture change within hours of signing signing the deal to officially become the CEO, are there any red flags with Marcus Stroman that you could possibly see where it could hit a snag in terms of the post-Wilpon era and the new culture shift, if you will? Does he fit in the Steve Cohen type Mets team?
Well, first off, you mentioned Steve Cohen signing the deal. I've always tried to envision what that's like exactly. Is it like you write a check for $2.4 billion and Fred goes, "Well, here are the keys to the stadium"? I've always wondered what that was like. How does that work? But it's a good question. Marcus Stroman is an outspoken guy. He's a different personality. than we've grown accustomed to in professional sports. I think we've gotten used to, or we've been conditioned to just, hear the classic cliches out of players. I just want to help the team and do my part and blah, 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 blah. And Marcus Stroman is not that kind of person. But in a way, I think it's a little bit refreshing. Oftentimes when you have players like this, and Trevor Bauer's another one of those guys, you're going to hear things which don't sound good, which may be unpopular, and may rub some people the wrong way. But I think at the same time, just having learned about Marcus Stroman over the last year and a half or so, I mean, I could understand how a comment like that, especially in the context of Tony La Russa, I can understand how that might rub people in the industry the wrong way. It might be a turnoff, but I think ultimately, the same can be said about Bauer, especially, who, I'll never forget as long as I live when he threw that ball over the fence in center field before leaving the game. I mean, that was not cool, to say the least. But I don't think that would stop me as a general manager or an owner from signing someone like that. It's about the talent. I think there's more to the personality than just the negative things that we often conclude about players when we tend to only see or contextualize about the negative things that they sometimes say and do. And I'll throw Alex Rodriguez into that mix too, because this is a guy who, for the better part of 15 years, as a fan, pissed me off. And certainly, what he pulled on MLB in 2013, 2014, when he just essentially sued the pants off the league, that was disgraceful. But he was that different personality. I mean, he's that type A. You can argue he's a narcissist in probably a little bit better way than some of the other public figures out there. But he's done a lot to clean it up. And kind of create a better image for himself. And I think Marcus Stroman in particular, I don't think he had that negative aura or that dark cloud following him, but he still has a very positive influence on people. People view him positively within the industry, despite some of the comments he's made over time. And I don't know if the same can be said, at least to that degree, about someone like Trevor Bauer. But in the end, if I need pitching, or I want those two guys on my roster. If I'm any owner, these are good players with good and strong and sustained track records. So, is it a problem? Yeah. Can it be a problem in New York? Absolutely. Can it be a problem with the Mets, who always, historically anyway, have always, hit walls of trouble? Yeah, no question. It can come back and bite. I mean, we learned that with Yoenis Cespedes too. With all the good that he brought to the table, we saw just as much, if not more, bad. So, I don't think that should be a turnoff, though, when you're trying to evaluate talent. I mean, the personality is big, especially in New York, and it's a factor. And I can tell you that's important to Sandy Alderson too. But if they didn't want him, they wouldn't have extended the qualifying offer. And I know that was pre-Sandy and pre-Cohen, but in the end, they could have just let him go, and that would have been the end of it. So I think there is quite a bit of value that he would bring to the table for the Mets. Even with his his strong personality, I think it's actually an asset for this team.
So if you don't mind, just two more questions before I throw it back to you. Now, you had brought up Francisco Lindor earlier while you're on here with us, and you guys had spoken about the Lindor trade. And I look at it where, ever since what happened last year with Mookie Betts, when he was traded from Boston to Los Angeles and he signed that massive deal to keep him out in the ravine for his whole career, you figure, would we see that with a Francisco Lindor if he were to come to the Mets, or if Sandy Alderson, was to trade for him? And especially too, because of the track record that Sandy Alderson has when it comes to the trades, he's done such a phenomenal job. Could he get that done where then he can really, put his mark in Queens, where then he can get that big time deal done? Do you see that happening?
It's hard. I think, I said before, and I'll say it again, I think the Mets are in the dry, they have the advantage in that type of situation because of the uncertain market, both this year and next year, the uncertain finances in the league. And the Mets don't have uncertain finances. They have they have a ton of money right now, which is, I keep saying, incredible. Like, what? They're the Mets, who have billions all of a sudden, and so that gives them an advantage. Now, does that mean Lindor is going to want to sign any kind of extension? Noah Syndergaard is one of those pitchers, one of those players that come to mind who, despite the uncertainty, even last year pre-COVID, looking ahead to the issues with the collective bargaining agreement expiring, had no interest in signing signing an extension with the Mets. He seemed pretty, you listen to him and you read the quotes and so on and so forth. He seemed intent on testing free agency. Lindor will be, probably the best, if not one of the best free agents on the supposed market a year from now, at age 28. He can probably, he's going to get his money. Even, I think, in an uncertain market, he's going to get his money. So is he going to be interested in a long-term deal? Yes, if the money's right. I think, like I said, the Mets are in an ideal position where they can at least have that discussion with him. I don't know that the Mets can give up the talent that it would take to get him without at least making every last effort to sign him to a very long-term contract. Again, like, if this isn't a guy that you trade for as a rental, if you're the Mets, this is a guy you're gonna, along with Pete Alonso, and maybe to a lesser extent Jacob deGrom because of his age. These are guys you're gonna want to build around. These are gonna be your foundational pieces. So, yeah, I think Sandy Alderson will try. Will he be successful? I'm not Lindor. I don't know. I mean, he hasn't really, these players are really smart about what they say and what they don't say most of the time in public. So, look, if the Mets offer him $350 million, he'd be an idiot to turn that down. That's all I can say. So I don't know that Sandy Alderson will offer him that kind of money. I mean, I can tell you just from my experience with Sandy is, he's always been risk averse when it comes to long-term contracts, but he has always cited the exception, and the exception is for a premium player under the age of 30. And to be fair to Sandy Alderson, I think at this point we can all agree that signing players who are 30 years and older to long-term contracts is a bad baseball decision. It doesn't mean they shouldn't do it at times, but it is a bad baseball decision. And Sandy got burned by David Wright. The Mets have gotten burned by Yohan Centeno, Yoenis Cespedes, and pretty much everyone they've signed to those, as he would call it, second generation contracts. So, I would expect Sandy Alderson to make every last effort to sign Lindor to a contract extension before spring training if he were to procure him. That's the exception for Sandy Alderson. Does it get done? Yeah. We'll have to see.
Right. So now, and you know what? And you brought that up perfectly because of the, to see if he can get that trade deal, or not only the trade deal done, but to eventually, first get the trade done, and then to, sign, seal, and deliver, get that stamp and the pen to the paper with that extension. Now, we saw with Sandy Alderson in, I guess, the first tenure or the first round of Sandy here in Queens. We've heard from, and I've seen writers too, especially, I don't remember where it was, one of the newspapers, maybe the New York Post or whatnot, but there was some criticism from Sandy Alderson or from writers saying that Sandy Alderson might, with his track record when it comes to trades, can he get it done on the free agent market? Because his track record is so good in the trading market, how is it going to fare in the free agent market? You as a Mets insider, Michael, what is your thought to some of your counterparts, to some of your writing counterparts? Could he get it done in terms of the free agent market? And was it because of the Wilpons that he had such a restriction that he could not forge out the money or, give those blank checks to people? What are your thoughts on that?
It's a good question. I mean, he never publicly stated that he was restricted financially by the Wilpons. I don't think any GM before or after ever said anything like that. They would always say, you know, we can sign whoever we want. We can make any recommendation we want, you know, the standard, you know, toting the line, if you will. But the one thing, and so, you know, with that said, I mean, you're right. I mean, most of the free agents the Mets have signed, maybe except for R.A. Dickey and maybe Marlon Byrd, you know, just a couple of free agents that they've signed over the years. They strike out more often than they hit home runs with their free agents. With that said, it's not as if they've signed, you know, first-tier free agents, right? You know, it's not as if they, you know, in 2000, you know, it's not as if he signed Robinson Cano to that 10-year deal when he was in his prime, for instance. It's not as if, you know, he signed, I don't know, give me another example for during that era.
I would say, Michael, I think the glaring point is the signing Jason Bay over Matt Holliday in 2011, I would think. No?
Right. That's a really great example where, you know, there were clearly restrictions, you know, on signing a long-term deal like the one Matt Holliday got. I mean, you know, you can cite the second generation contract issue for someone like Holliday, but I think in the end of the day, you know, Jason Bay's salary was definitely less, you know, and over a shorter period of time, and they got, you know, the next best player in that situation. And got, you know, I mean, obviously, you know, he fell off a cliff when he came to New York, but you know, that's another example. You know, and I think as good and as valuable as Curtis Granderson was to the Mets when they signed when he came on board after, I think it was 2014. You know, that was still a very short term, you know, modest risk-based contract, and it just ended up working out pretty well. That was actually a good free agent signing. But so I don't know that, you know, at least during his Mets tenure. Now I'll leave David Wright's contract out of it for the moment. I don't, because he wasn't a free agent. I mean, you know, even Yoenis Cespedes, it was a lot of money, but it was still a short-term deal. Like, I don't think Sandy Alderson has been tested fairly in, you know, signing those first-tier free agents to real long and lucrative deals. Like, he just never did that with the Mets. You know, he got burned by David Wright's deal. I would argue he got burned by Yoenis Cespedes' deal. But, you know, the common denominator there is that these were second-generation contracts. And so there we go again. You know, they were both over the age of 30, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, that brings me back to Lindor. It's worth the risk. You know, even if it's a complete bomb, which, you know, if you watch the Mets long enough, you know that it probably will bomb out at some point. Right? Something will happen. Something dumb will happen, and it will you know, it'll be an albatross. I'm just kidding. You know, I think Lindor is a fantastic player, and I think he'd be a fantastic fit here. But, you know, I think, you know, he has to be able to, you have to give him the tools to be able to sign that kind of deal, and he really never had that. And I only say that, I'm not trying to put words in his mouth when I say that. I just get back to, again, like, it gets back to what I said before when he said the other day, it's about the acquisition, not the cost of the acquisition. Think about what that means. It's not just, you know, a classic, you know, clever Sandy Alderson line. There is a lot built into that statement. And that, in my opinion, a major indictment, you know, on his previous boss, right? He's flat out saying right there, every time I had to worry about the cost. Now I don't. You know, so what does that mean? Now he can go get the free agents he wants. So let's see how he, you know, if he can connect, you know, on, you know, a true major market deal. You know, not, you know, a 4-year deal to Granderson here, or a 2-year deal to that player here, or a flyer on that guy here. You know, those are nice and great stories, but, you know, ultimately, you know, he was never able to get that, you know, he was never able to sign that difference-making piece. He was able to trade, like you said, he was able to trade for that difference-making piece when, you know, he basically hit a grand slam every time he came up to the plate in 2015 with those trades. You know, and he admitted how lucky he got when he made those trades, and how basically as bad that it went that bad the next year with the trades in 2016 with Jay Bruce. That was a complete bomb for him. So, you know, it's all a crapshoot. But I think you have to give any employee of a company the tools to be successful in their job, no matter what they do or how high they are. And I don't think Sandy ever got the tools he was owed, you know, as a general manager of a major market club, right?
I think you said it best before, Michael, about the Wilpons saying low risk and next best player. And I remember being a naive, 24-year-old at the time. And I had a coworker that used to tell me, that the Mets never went after the best player or never even attempted to sign the best player, that they always went for the guy for less money and less years. And the naive person in me, before I really knew the finances of baseball, would say, no, that's not the way the Mets, operate. And boy, I couldn't have been more wrong. But, turning back here to Steve Cohen and new ownership, he had mentioned that he wants to be, in the know with certain things, but he's going to let the front office do its job. It reminds me a lot, even though I wasn't alive at the time, of when George Steinbrenner stepped in as owner of the Yankees and said, I'm going to let the front office do their job. I'm not going to be too involved in the day-to-day work of the team. And go figure, he becomes, he and Jerry Jones fall in the same boat, with the Cowboys. It's he was involved every day in the day-to-day decisions. And, do you believe, listen, the man has a lot of money and he said, I'm in this for the fun. He makes most of his money, all his money as a hedge fund manager, and he's obviously a lifelong fan. But do you believe, at least at this point, that you feel that he's going to sit back and let Sandy and the guys, the brain trust kind of run the show?
That's a good question. I think I have the same question as a fan. I have the same questions as you do as to whether or not that will hold true. But it doesn't. Let's just say, for argument's sake, that he pulls a Steinbrenner or or a Jeff Wilpon or a Jerry Jones. And he meddles and he puts his nose where it doesn't belong. I don't really know how to rationalize the behavior. I think you just kind of have to take him at his word at that point. You're never going to know the truth, even if he does or doesn't anyway, right? I don't. It's a good question. I'm trying to come up with a rationale as to why that how it can be an okay thing, but I really can't think of one. It's it would be like me, as a fan, calling Sandy and telling him, how to do his job. And I can't, there's nothing good that can come from me stepping out of bounds, but, I come from the management mold of, that type of delegation where, you pay people to do a certain job and you have to, you have to put trust in that investment. And I would hope that, if Steve Cohen runs his primary business, Point72, in the manner in which he states he does, i.e. he's hands off, he pays people a lot of money to make him a lot of money, I would trust that he'll run this business the same way. But time will tell, of course. I don't have a crystal ball, unfortunately. I don't have a way to tell you one way or another. He's been the owner for about 15 minutes. He seems like a cool and hip guy and everything, and that's great. It's refreshing. But losing is the ultimate test. What does that do to him? What does that do? What kind of reaction does it have? George Steinbrenner did not react well to it. I would say Jeff Wilpon did not react well to it. Jerry Jones doesn't react well to winning. So and most owners and most executives, they hate losing more than they like winning. Which is kind of a crazy psycho thing, but it's true. Winning bothers them more than they enjoy winning, and I'm sorry, losing bothers them more than they enjoy winning, and losing can bring out the worst in people. Negativity brings out the worst in people, and all in life, right? So we have to put them to the test, because even if the Mets have a $225 million payroll next year and are the pick to go to the World Series, they're going to have ebbs and flows over a 162-game season. So how does he respond when they're winning, and how does he respond when they're losing? And how does Sandy respond when they're winning or losing, and his executive management team that he's going to build? He's going to, Michael Hill, actually, that was kind of a very intriguing name that popped up. He's a very underrated baseball executive. So I trust that Steve is going to entrust Sandy to surround himself with the best people at all costs and to build a winning organization, and hopefully sooner rather than later, of course. But like I said, you have to see, I'm more fascinated with the team when they're losing. How does the manager respond? How does the manager begin to manage? How do the players begin to press? How are these executives? How's this new executive team, going to respond? Steve Cohen's in uncharted territory. Losing money in the stock market or in one of his funds is different than, losing the back pages and losing public perception, with this professional sports team in this city. So I'll let you know. Let's talk in 6 months or 10 months. It's still just November.
Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Barron, Mets insider. Michael, really appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much again. And I hope you stay safe, you stay healthy. And again, I'm a Yankees fan, but you know what? New York is in my heart. So I will say this, and all Yankees fans out there, don't kill me, but let's go Mets. I really do. I do really mean it.
I appreciate it, guys. Stay safe. It was a lot of fun. It's always fun to talk baseball. It's a good distraction right now, let me tell you.
Thanks so much for coming on, Michael.
Yeah, Michael, thank you so much. Stay safe, stay healthy, and hopefully we'll have you back on down the road for sure.
Definitely. Looking forward to it.
Thanks, guys. All right. So, right now, where is Rob DeLuca, actually? My goodness, what's going on here? Oh, there he is. Oh, my goodness. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on.
Is Casey Bryant back? That's what it looked like to me on the.
No, I think we're kicking you out, Ian. That's brutal. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back, Rob DeLuca. We missed you for about a half hour, but we're glad to have you back, and let's keep it going here.
Yeah, I profusely apologize for having to cut out there, especially to Michael. I mean, that was not. I should not have. It's unfortunate. This was something out of my control that I had to dip out for a sec, but
it's okay.
I very much apologize to Michael, to you guys, but especially to Michael. And he did I caught a little bit of the last 10 minutes there. I thought he did a great job, and I would love to see him back here. He definitely he seems very confident in the Mets. So
yeah, there's no doubt about it. And you know what? Actually, I was going to ask this question for those that are watching or listening to us. Please put it in the comments on YouTube, on Facebook. The Binghamton Rumble Ponies, they are now, or they remain, the AA affiliate for the Mets, when just a few days ago, there was talk, and we actually heard this months ago, that the Brooklyn Cyclones would be the new AA affiliate. But all of that was just scrapped. And word came out that we heard, it was some rumors going around and, some rumblings, if you will, no pun intended, that the Binghamton Rumble Ponies now are going to stay as the AA affiliate for the Mets. I was going to ask Michael, and again, for those that are watching, please place it in the comments and think and tell us what you think is going to happen to MCU Park and to the Brooklyn Cyclones, because I really want to know what's going to happen there if they axe the New York Penn League, if they axe short season A-ball. We have no idea what's going to happen. And all I know is that would really stink because Staten Island Yankees are gone, and there's still one minor league team unofficially left, and that is the Brooklyn Cyclones down on Coney Island. It's really amazing. Go down to Nathan's, go get a hot dog and some cheese fries, and head down over to MCU Park for a ball game and a summer night. It really is amazing. I wanted to ask Michael about that, but I know we didn't have time. So let's actually go back here to football, because we were talking football for a while, and then we were rudely interrupted by Michael. No, not at all. Stuff with Michael, but I want to get back to football because it is football season, and things are heating up because we look back just before Michael came on. We were doing a buy or sell segment with Buffalo and with the Indianapolis Colts. But I want to get back to the New Orleans and Tampa Bay game. That was an absolute destruction, domination, implosion of Tom Brady. You would see memes, you would see a lot of different things that would say, well, Tom Brady now has an actual opponent in his division and he can't beat him. Is he the best quarterback alive? Yes, he is not only the best quarterback alive, but he's still the best quarterback of all time. Yes, and yes.
No question about it.
No question about it. And you're going up against the Hall of Famer. Listen, it was raining. You had Hurricane Eta, which was just right around the corner. It happens. What a game, though. Battle for the NFC South, and all you come up with is 3 points. Ian Schraier. Excuse me. How many? It was 38-3. Yeah, I was right. Okay. I want to start off with Rob DeLuca here. Welcome back, sir. It's been about 40 minutes here without you. So, again, 38.
Worst 40 minutes of my life.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. 38-3 is the final score in favor of the New Orleans Saints. And Michael Thomas barely had any impact on this game. I don't know, man. How about the class of the NFC South might run through New Orleans? What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, I expected the NFC South to run through New Orleans when the season started. I did not think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were going to be the division champs. I had the Saints taking first place from the preseason that never was, but I had the Saints taking that division. So the fact that they kind of exposed the Buccaneers here, I don't know if that's the word we can use here, but based on the final score, if someone didn't watch, that's what someone could assume, because you shut them down on both sides of the ball. You run up the score completely, and then you completely stop the greatest quarterback to ever live on this earth, and pretty much hold him to nothing. Yeah, he's 43 years old now, but guess what? The quarterback on the other side is also 43 years old. So, but he couldn't be stopped. So you know what? I think they exposed the Tampa Bay Bucks as potentially, I'm not saying that now, because I'm still in on them, because, you know, Tom Brady can make any miracle happen, but they could potentially be fake news. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that is. The New Orleans, I mean, look, I really did have New Orleans at first place from the get-go. I'm sticking by it. I think this game proved it. And I think that it shows that the Saints are not going to go anywhere. They're not going to go quietly, and they will make noise come playoff time.
Ian.
I want to go back to something that Rob said. I don't remember if it was last week's show or the week before, but he had said that the New York Giants, when they played the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Monday Night Football, that they finally might have exposed Tom Brady for the 43-year-old quarterback that he is. And I think he looked every bit of 43 years old on Sunday. Look, the New Orleans Saints last Sunday played about as perfect a game, I think, as we've seen them play probably this whole season. I was in the same boat as Rob. I felt that the New Orleans Saints were going to be the team that comes out of the NFC South, and after week one and the good performance they put up against Tampa Bay at home at the Dome, and it felt like it was maybe not going to be a cruise for New Orleans, but it seemed like they were going to have that division in control, and then they lose to Vegas the week after that. And it appears that Brady's arm strength Breeze's arm strength is starting to go a little bit. So, and the Buccaneers are starting to put it together. So, look, like I said, the Saints played about as perfect a game as you could have asked them. They entered the game. The Saints did with the worst run defense in the National Football League, and have allowed their opponents in the red zone to score 100% of the time. And they held a team on the road. So they held a team that was playing at home with fans there, mind you, to 3 points. Brady threw 3 picks. Ronald Jones was held to 8 yards on 3 carries. So think about how important Rojo has been to that offense and how much he really opens up that passing game for guys like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, who on Sunday were held to a combined 7 receptions. I don't know how much could have really been expected at this point from Antonio Brown. I know he had 3 or 4 catches. Look, it's going to take time for him to find his sea legs. We know what Gronk's story is at this point. I mean, he's still a red zone threat. We've seen him catch a few touchdowns, but he's certainly not the player that he was. And New Orleans, from an overall look at the stats, they outgained them on total offense by almost a 2-1 margin at 420 yards of total offense for New Orleans to only 194 yards of total offense for Tampa Bay, and a rush differential on the ground of 138-8, 2-1 in time of possession. So the Saints, as far as I'm concerned right now, I mean, they certainly have the tiebreaker against the Bucs, so it's pretty much like you have even a half game or even a full game up on the Bucs at this point. And if the Saints can keep putting performances like that together, they're going to be in real good shape. Tampa Bay's got a big game coming up. Granted, there's no Christian McCaffrey, but they've got a big game coming up against Carolina this weekend.
Tom Brady's 5 of 7 interceptions have come against the Saints this season. Also, Tom Brady has trailed by 30-plus points in the first half of a game for the first time in his career. And his career, fellas, is 294 games, including this one.
Wow.
That is an amazing streak that I don't think will ever be broken, ever.
No.
Ladies and gentlemen, we continue to move on here, and we want to bring up last week's guest, Jim Wexell. And, what did he say last week, Ian? And he did say that, there was a possibility. He asked Ben Roethlisberger about, the enthusiasm. He asked Ben Roethlisberger, in preparation of the Dallas Cowboys game, if he has a career worst first half again, which he almost did, is there some, reason for concern? And Ben Roethlisberger said no, there wasn't. He's ready to go. But it didn't look like he was ready to go. Dallas was really close to pulling off the upset and would have been astronomically terrible for the Vegas sports books out there. Ian, I mean,
I didn't know if you were leading me into that or if that's
I was gonna say, I mean, in terms of Dallas is playing with house money. Ian, did Jim Wexell say it or did he not say it?
Well, look, we were sitting here this time last week, and talking to Jim Wexell from the Steel City Insider, and he had said to us, clear as day, that the Steelers were laying 14 points against the Cowboys, and for most people in this country, that would have seemed like a lock of a bet with the way the Cowboys have been playing this year. And he had mentioned to us not to lay the 14 points because coming off of a Ravens game, the Steelers historically do not play well. I look, the line was originally 10, and I was like, at 10, I would feel comfortable. 14 is a lot of points, even for a team that was playing with a fourth-string quarterback and a team that was just dismal in every facet of the game. And yet, he was right. Look, I don't want to sit here and say, look, the Steelers had a dismal first half. You can't treat teams that are inferior to you like that. You can't look past an inferior opponent. We've seen it happen so many times. Look, it's the whole any given Sunday mantra when it comes to football. But look, when you let inferior teams hang around, they find a way to stick in games. They start building up confidence. They start building up momentum. Okay. In regards to the Steelers, I don't want to throw the book at them right now. I mean, look, they're 8-0 for a reason. I do have question marks regarding the Steelers, especially offensively. But they're doing everything right. Look, in the second half, Ben played one of his best halves of the year. Juju Smith-Schuster finally had his first real good, solid game in weeks. In the second half, it was a tale of two halves. But look, going back to what you were saying, Joey, about a bad first half by Ben, I can't throw the book right now at the Steelers. They're 8-0, and there's something to be said for that too.
Rob DeLuca, your thoughts on the Dallas Cowboys almost, and when we say almost, they were this close to getting the upset victory.
Yeah, I mean, look, this was by far shocking that Dallas held on for so long. But as Ian said, if you play down to your opponents, do not be surprised if they might burn you. You have to play your brand of football every Sunday. Otherwise, it could come back to get you, and it almost got the Steelers. Because, look, Ian and I are Giants fans. We've been seeing this for how many years? Giants opponents come in and play down to them, and the Giants are in the game for 3.5 quarters because of it. But bad teams will find ways to lose, just like Dallas found a way to lose on Sunday against Pittsburgh. I would say Dallas found a way to lose because they really did have Pittsburgh on the ropes. But then it was just like, it's like reality set in, and the bad Dallas team we've seen all season showed up late in the game, and lo and behold, the Steelers are a shocking 8-0.
Now, I want to move on here as we have roughly about 10 minutes to go. it's really I want to bring this up now in terms of is there a team that can make a run to the final wild card? And the reason why I bring this up is because there were a couple of scares. Not only were there a couple of scares, but it just shows that in 2020 anything can happen. And with the announcement that had just arisen a few days ago, that was the possible schedule change. God forbid if there were any cancellations, where there wouldn't be any makeups, but there would be an 8th playoff team. Now, with that being said, is there a certain AFC or NFC team that you can see that could come in and pull a 2007 New York Giants?
Well, it's certainly not going to be someone from the NFC or AFC East. I'll promise you that right now. That's low and behold. The NFC East is on the line on Sunday. If the Eagles win, it's over. But nonetheless, it's very tough to say because now we're in an expanded playoff and it's 2020 and you already have the on any given Sunday mentality. And now you throw in the, oh my God, it's 2020. Anything can happen at any given moment. You really have to stop and think about it almost, because it's like, can someone with a positive record right now that doesn't look that good, but because of their record being just good enough and they're being in 8th spot now, can they sneak in and make a little noise? You look at someone like the Cleveland Browns sitting at 5-3, and if they can they can win their easy games, it could be enough for a playoff record. And then, hey, playoffs are a whole different monster. You don't know what's going to happen. So you look at teams that are fringing 500, a little above 500, like a Cleveland, and you just don't know. Or literally any team in the NFC West, for that matter, except for maybe San Francisco. They may the injury bug may have permanently plagued them for this season, which is very unfortunate because I was actually looking forward to seeing an entire division make the playoffs and see what kind of chaos that would have caused. But it looks like that's going to fall just short.
Ian Schraier, your thoughts?
Rob mentioned one 5-3 team. I'm going to mention the 5-3 team that no one is giving any love to right now, and is the Miami Dolphins. I don't know how. Look, I know that right now in theory they are shocking the world at 5-3. Or I should say they're not much of a shock of the world at 5-3, considering how well they're playing of late. But who exactly coming into 2020 had the Miami Dolphins 8 games in at 5-3?
Not me.
No.
Right? Who had Ryan Fitzpatrick? We all knew he was a gamer, but like, who had between Ryan Fitzpatrick and then him pulling the Kurt Warner that he did for Eli Manning with the Giants in 2004, and paving the way for Tua Tagovailoa. And granted, his defense was the reason that they won his first start, but he comes through and has such an efficient game last week against Arizona. The defense is coming up with big stops when they need it. Like I said, the Rams game, they forced 4 turnovers. The Arizona game, the game is tied. It's 4th and 1 for Arizona inside the Miami 30. They get the stop. It sets the table for the game-winning field goal. Granted, Zane Gonzalez leaves the game-tying field goal short at the end of regulation, but Miami doesn't come up with that stop. Arizona probably wins the game. So why Miami? Look, I'm not expecting – I think to use a comparison, Joey's the 2007 Giants is a little premature. I'm not even saying that as a fan. I'm saying that because I'm thinking more of a team that can maybe come in and win around. I'm not expecting the Dolphins to be representing the AFC here. But right now there are 3 teams tied for that 7th and final AFC playoff spot. Now, granted, whether or not there's an 8th, but 3 teams tied: the Las Vegas Raiders, the Cleveland Browns, and the Miami Dolphins. And of those 3 franchises, there is one team of those 3 that really stands out right now, and that's got to be Miami. And on top of that, they're a half game back of Indianapolis, and we already spoke about the Colts for 4th, and 1 game back of Baltimore for 5th. Now, I don't expect the Dolphins to take over Baltimore, but I could certainly see them sneaking up a little bit into that 5 spot and overtaking Indy. On the NFC side, the team that everybody should be talking about right now because the NFC is so wide open is the Minnesota Vikings. Weren't we on this show 3 weeks ago, talking about how they were 1-5? They were selling Yannick Ngakoue. This team was ready to have a draft in the top 5, and yet somehow Dalvin Cook is running towards the most valuable player award. Excuse me. They trade Ngakoue, and they hold their last 2 opponents to their 2 lowest single-game outputs on defense that they've had all season. So they trade Ngakoue, and defensively, where I can't really name more than maybe 2 guys in their defensive 11, starting 11 right now, they're playing better without Ngakoue. So I don't know how that works out, but right now the Minnesota Vikings are 2 games out of a playoff spot. 2. And they've got a game with Chicago this weekend where they have a chance to move within a half game of the Bears. And we certainly know what's going on with Chicago right now. Watch out, Minnesota. 3-5, 2 games out of a playoff spot with half a season to go. If no one is stopping Dalvin Cook right now, watch for them to rise through the ranks.
Dalvin Cook is beginning to, I don't know, cook a nice dinner or something. Try and get these. That was a horrible joke.
I saw what you were trying to do.
I tried. That was brutal. With a few minutes to go, fellas, let's go into our kudos as we have done the last two weeks, and now let's make it a third. Let's make this a weekly thing. So, with a few minutes to go, Ian Schraier, who does your kudos of the week go to?
Don Mattingly. Listen, certainly well-deserved National League Manager of the Year, who had the Miami Marlins in the playoffs. Look, as I said months ago, when they had released their preview for the season, and MLB Network didn't even give the Marlins a sniff a chance. And who did? And then they get struck by COVID. And they play 1 game and then don't play a game for 3 weeks, maybe even the better part of a month. And they come back and half their roster has COVID, so they're signing guys. They're literally taking guys off the street and dropping them in, and yet somehow they were buyers at the trade deadline for Starling Marte. Unbelievable story this year. Don Mattingly, the Marlins, NL East. I mean, hard to argue is that they're not the best division right now, at least for going forward in 2021, the best division in baseball. And Mattingly's certainly deserving of it.
Bold statement. Rob DeLuca, your kudos, which go ahead.
It's a little off radar this week, but you know what? I'm gonna give my kudos to the Adidas company. Yep, the new NHL jersey maker. When they took look, I have given Adidas a lot of crap ever since they took over for Reebok. When they first started out and came out with these alternate jerseys, they came out with the new jerseys, I was disgusted, especially as a Devils fan. They took away a lot of design and made it way too plain. But look, from just the sneak peeks we're getting from these reverse retros, it looks like almost every single one of them is going to be a home run, or at least close to it. These are fabulous, and I got to give credit where credit is due. I have given them none because I literally have not liked anything they've done since they took over. But this is finally a step in the right direction for them. Kudos to you, Adidas.
And Rob, can I just jump in there before Joey, you get to your kudos? I just got to say, I think it's great. Oh, I was seeing that logo.
Yes, that is so great.
The fact that it looks like the Rangers are going to bring back the Lady Liberty jerseys, and the Islanders are bringing back the Pekka Yashin days, and it looks like DeLuca that they're the Devils, and I know they've worn these jerseys before, but
this time it's a green base, so it's going to be it actually looks pretty fresh. I just hope we don't look too close to Minnesota.
Ladies and gentlemen, my kudos one final time. It goes to the Golden State Warriors. They are presenting a plan to the Bay Area, to San Francisco, and attempting to allow 50% capacity in their building for the upcoming NBA season. This article was retrieved from NBC Sports Bay Area. And the plan is that they're going to be spending a lot of money to not only get testing done on site, it's going to be rapid testing, and it's going to be done within minutes of your entry. And if you get a test that's negative, you'll be allowed into the arena. And I think that with the Golden State Warriors doing that, I personally believe that we're going to see some teams follow suit. And the old saying is, if you want to make money, you have to spend money. And I think now a lot of these teams that are in some financial trouble, they need to get fans back in the stands. And if it's safe, hey, all the power to you, because I do believe that would be a pretty cool idea. I'm not going to say that San Francisco is going to say yes to it, but all I know is that the presentation part and the idea of it, to think outside of the box and to, spend this money to be able to, move this whole thing forward and try and get back to normal life, I think is definitely a step forward in a wacky 2020 that we've all experienced. And that's where my kudos goes to the Golden State Warriors, where they're most likely going to just be running the table yet again next year. And they either trade for someone or they get the number one pick, or they already have the number one pick. So again, it's going to be craziness out in San Francisco. And if they were to do this, boy, a lot of NBA teams are going to say, why didn't we act sooner? We could be the ones that are, on a pedestal right now. And, everyone's looking up to us. So again, my kudos goes to the Golden State Warriors. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a lot to discuss in terms of bills to pay. Tomorrow, we continue our partnership with the New York Professional Scouts Association. We will be showcasing former East Coast scouting supervisor for the Baltimore Orioles, John Stokey. He is the one that found legendary pitcher for the Baltimore Orioles and World Series champion, the late Mike Flanagan, the southpaw pitcher that helped lead his team to the 1983 World Series. So pretty cool stuff there. That will be tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. right here on the Eastern Observer and also the New York Professional Scouts Association channels as well. Someone we would like to also welcome into the Blackjack Media Group family is Hunter Metnick. Hunter Metnick is going to be writing for the Eastern Observer. He's going to be writing for his current school, Temple University. So we would like to welcome him to the family because our group is growing and our family is growing as well. So we'd like to welcome Hunter Metnick to the family, and hopefully he's here to stay for the long run. Also, we continue Monday night. Ian Schraier welcomes someone else from his sports information doghouse. That is former New York Mets contributor, writer, host on SNY, host on ESPN 1050 AM at the time, now known as 98.7. Adam Rubin. He took a detour away from the New York Mets, and he is now an associate athletic director for strategic communications for Stony Brook University. That will come to you live on Monday, November 16th at 8 p.m. right here on the Eastern Observer and the I-95 Sports Network channel 198. Really good stuff. Ian, talk about what your plans are give us a little bit of a sneak preview for Adam Rubin.
Yeah, I've got a lot of questions for him. Certainly, it's not every day you see a professional in our business that started in professional sports and wanted to make their way down to the college side. Really interested in hearing about his beginnings. He was a student at the Wharton School, at the illustrious Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania, an economics major, and ended up turning out to do some writing for the Daily Pennsylvanian. And certainly want to ask him about his experience doing that, if he kind of got exposed to sports that way, and had the opportunity to work a couple of games at the Palestra, where Fran Dunphy, before he went to Temple, funny how we were mentioning Temple, where he's the acting AD, but that Fran Dunphy made his made his meals a little bit, I should say, at Penn, and that the last time that they made the NCAA tournament was '94, and Adam was a student at Penn at that time. So a lot of good trips down memory lane, especially with the Mets, but it'll be a real nice look back on his time in the field and what really got him into the field.
Also, one final note here. On Tuesday night, episode number 28 of the Essential Wrestling Podcast comes to you live Tuesday, November 17th at 6 p.m. The show is presented to you by ProWrestlingPick'em.com. That is with Al Carl, John Smith, John Diaconti, Ryan Joy of Minutes to Bell Time, and Gary Miheffi, our Irish resident, if you will. He'll be on talking NXT UK during the show. So really, really good stuff moving forward on the Eastern Observer and also the I-95 Sports Network. Hey, you know what? Tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow morning, I'm going to be a camera guy and actually a play-by-play guy for a high school over in New Jersey. So tune in. Elmwood Park taking on Emerson tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon, 12:30. Tune in, channel 198 Zingo. If you're bored, if you don't want to watch Rob DeLuca produce college football, come take us. Come say hello. Elmwood Park High School.
So I'm gonna guess you're making a pit stop at Rob's on the way home, then, right?
Well, listen. The way Elmwood Park is and where Rob is, it's a little off the beaten track. And on top of it, he's not even gonna be home. So he's not gonna be home. So, but if he was home, yes, I probably would. But ladies and gentlemen, one final time, Ian Schraier, Rob DeLuca, I'm Joey Jarzynka, and for all of us at the Blackjack Media Group, we'll see you next time.